My name is Kristin Morris. I'm an archivist at the Computer History Museum. Today I'm interviewing Pam Cass for the VMware Founders Collection. Today is October 10th, at least it is where I'm sitting, 2023. And this interview will become part of the permanent collection at the Computer History Museum. Pam, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
First, just for the record, tell us your name and your current home base.
Yes, so I'm Pamela Cass. Most people call me Pam, and I'm based in Sydney, Australia, so on the other side of the world.
Tell us a little bit about your educational and career path leading up to VMware.
Sure. So, I am Australian. I actually was born in Singapore, so I was actually born in the region and came along quite quickly, supposed to be born back here in Australia, but decided to jump ship in those days early and popped up in Singapore. So I think those early days of living and being in Singapore sort of helped shape my love for the region as well. So I grew up in Australia. My parents moved around a fair bit. My father was in the telecommunications industry, and my mother was air hostess. And so I had, I think, those genes from the early days of the love of travel, of curiosity and seeing things. And so I spent my education in Adelaide largely, then graduated, went to university in Sydney, did a marketing and communications undergraduate degree and then a master's. And then from there, went in the early days into originally into journalism and started covering technology. And had this love of the technology industry early on, and then started my path into the industry in the early days here in Australia and Asia Pacific, where I joined an in-house role in marketing, and then went from strength to strength in expanding that into leadership roles across Asia Pacific, including marketing, sales, and then all the way through into mergers and acquisitions, and eventually back to my true love, which was marketing. And I was approached then to join VMware, given my extensive experience in the region.
So, what was it about technology that sparked your interest?
So I think the thing that I'd always grown up with my father having been in the telecommunications industry, was sort of always being at the forefront of technological change and things that had been happening in those days. It was from the change from the wall phone to the handset to the computer phone, and we're always trying out new gadgets and things at home. So that curiosity, I think, and sort of thirst for playing with new technology and being at the forefront of an industry that was moving fairly fast, was always something that I really enjoyed being around and being part of.
So you came to VMware from Oracle, is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So originally, as I mentioned, I had different roles, predominantly in the enterprise, software industry in B2B marketing roles, and I'd been, at the forefront of a number of companies that were setting up in Australia and looking to expand in Asia Pacific, and always being part of helping to grow and build businesses in this part of the world. And so originally I was with Siebel, which was the forerunner, obviously, to Salesforce that we know today, but the leader in CRM in those days. And my role back then was very much setting up and building the business for Siebel as it expanded in this part of the world. And through obviously the Siebel work that we'd done, Oracle acquired Siebel. And I ended up taking on, a different role from marketing in Oracle, which again was building an applications business, and leading all of the inside sales team for applications. So again, a role that was very much around building, growing, expanding the region. And that's sort of something that I guess has sort of been my bag, if you like, and what I really I think I love and I excel at in terms of helping companies grow and expand. And so when the opportunity came along for this little company at that stage in this part of the world called VMware, I was quite intrigued about the opportunity to help take it and scale it out in this part of the world.
Were you very familiar with VMware before you started looking at this
No,
role?
no, I wasn't. I'd been approached by executive recruiter, and the brief was really very much around. It's very cool technology. It's very innovative. It's something completely game changing, and they're looking to build their presence in Asia Pacific and build that fast and grow that business. And so it was, I think, a combination of two things. One, in really looking at the innovative technology and how well engineered the products were at the time. And, we're going back to, the early days of the release of vSphere products. And the opportunity to also join a company that was actually, a great company from a cultural perspective. And I sort of found that through the interview process, which was actually pretty interesting because in those days, you didn't just do them over Zoom. You actually went in person to Palo Alto to meet all the executives. And so, my interview panel, if you like, was a combination of, some of our founding executives, which included Betsy Sutter, who's obviously, the Chief People Officer today, Carl Eschenbach, who was the worldwide head of sales then, before he became, the president and COO. It was meeting with people like Mike Clavel, who was the head of Asia Pacific at the time. He was flying in, flying out to the region. And they were still building the sales leadership presence here in Asia Pacific. And so I was sort of at the forefront of that, early days of, the pioneers, and also Raghu Raghuram, who obviously is the CEO of VMware today, was the head of the products, team at that stage. And so I interviewed with all of them over the space of a few days, and then came back completely energized about not just technology, but the company and the people. And I think what struck me the most was how open and approachable, and not only so passionate about what they were building in terms of technology, but also about the company and the culture that they were building, and that just blew me away. And I came back. Interviews had gone well, and then I joined and was part of this amazing, hyper growth company, and part of building that, and expansion in this part of the world.
So, how did you go about working up the strategy and then implementing it to really drive that growth that VMware was looking to achieve in the region?
So I think it was a few key things. The first was, as I mentioned, getting the right alignment with the business around the business goals and the growth strategy that the company was looking to drive in this part of the world and the expansion. And then the second part of it was working hand in glove with the leadership team that was coming on board at that time. And, we had a very special, I think, um, team that was being built, people that were being hired for their skills that they were all bringing to the table, and everyone was being, if you like, respected for their core domain on what their expertise was and what they were bringing, and that just worked. We were able to, there was a new leader for Asia Pacific with Andrew Dutton. He became the head of Asia Pacific sales, and I reported to him on one side, on the business side, and then I reported in to the CMO in Palo Alto, which was Karthik Rao at that time. And then, it was aligning those two priorities of what, the corporation was looking to do, and then what we needed to do and understand that in the region that would give us the growth. And we set about doing, I guess, two things. One was to really make the marketing organization the pointy end, if you like, at the tip, or the headlights of the business. So we would go in to really establish the brand presence for VMware as a market leader in each of the markets that we were expanding across the region. And in order to do that, I needed to hire a team. I had, when I first started, maybe 10 or 12 people, and I didn't have an aligned team to the sales organization that we were also hiring rapidly across the region. So opening up, marketing roles that were field roles that really understood how to drive brand awareness and also create demand for our sales organization. And that was really the role, was really the pivot of those two things. And was to do it in every market across Asia. So it was, Australia, China we just opened, India we had a bit of a presence from our R&D perspective, but very little from our sales operation and marketing perspective. Then Singapore expansion, Korea, Japan. So the whole, systematic approach to going forth and approaching each of those markets, hiring people, getting people on the ground, and then, building the brand through doing big awareness and flagship programs that would bring our community of customers together. And I think that's probably one of the things I'm most proud of, is the sort of the establishment of this program that we called V Forum at this stage, which was bringing our partners, our customers, and our employees together. And we started small, maybe a couple of thousand people, and maybe one or two markets in Asia, to building it out to being one of the largest software platform events in the Asia Pacific region. And that really was a great platform for us to really get behind and to build our awareness and our presence very quickly in the region, and to help us grow that year over year.
Mm-hmm. Such an important, I think, even going back to the first days of VMware's very first product, like finding those users, those customers who are really enthusiastic about the product, using
Yes.
it in innovative ways, falling in love with it, right? And then bringing them into your circle and supporting them.
Yes,
And
and building that community. A lot of it was building. The technology was, I think, one of the great things that's always been, so strong about VMware has been, you don't need to apologize for the products. The products are engineered so well. They are the innovation. So from a customer adoption perspective, the customers loved the technology. So that was a great starting platform from a marketeer's perspective, because if you don't have a great solution, it's always a harder lift, right? So the technology was strong, and so the adoption of the customers and the referenceability piece was a big part of sort of that awareness and building the brand, and building the customer advocacy and referenceability, and the community as part of that in the early days as well.
Mm-hmm. Were there instances you can recall where you needed to implement, say, a different strategy, or at least have a different angle on the strategy in different locations?
Very much so, and I think
Yeah.
that's Asia Pacific, right? No two markets are the same. The maturity levels, between the Australian market, which is one of the most highly adopted virtualization markets in the world, was very different to how you would approach that in more emerging markets in India or Korea, and so you had to tailor the strategy according to the market maturity, and where the customers were at on their adoption cycle. So that very much was a job that I worked closely with each of my marketing leaders, if you like, that I had put in place in India and Korea on the ground, because they knew the market best. And so they would work closely with sales to depending on where we were at, look at the strategy of what we would do and what we would deploy at that particular time on those markets. So we had multiple pronged approach to our strategy and to how you went about it. But the overarching, consistency of brand, consistency of, what we were doing to explain the fundamentals of the technology at the highest level remain the same. It just underneath it, some of the tactics you would use for the different markets would be different in order to get the customers together. But everyone came together on this one platform of the forum around the world.
Mm-hmm. Can you say something about building? It sounds to me like you joined VMware because this culture that you experienced when you, even just from the first time of meeting people,
Yes.
In that process of coming on board. Can you speak to how you then built that culture for your team?
Yeah, very much so. And I think when I joined, Paul Moritz was the CEO. He'd come on board the year before I joined. I joined in 2009, and so he set, I think, the foundations of very much what we know today as the Epic 2, values that the company, holds dearly. And I think, his care for the people, and his focus around creating a company that not only created great technology, but created a higher purpose, which was to give back, to create a company that would create good in the world, really was a values-based thing that we all, I think, really related to at the time. And it was sort of the early days of the start of the VMware Foundation program work as well. And so I think it all started to collide, because you had the great technology, you had the values base, coming in from the leader and setting that cultural tone. And it meant that everybody got behind it. People felt connected to it. People felt they wanted to be part of this rocket ship that was doing good in the world, not just creating great technology for technology's sake, but actually making a difference. And so that sort of sat pretty well with me, being someone that was pretty high on integrity, very execution, passionate about what I did. And so that translate into, I think, the people that we hired. We hired people that, it was no politics. It was very much people that wanted to get on, make a difference, move the ball forward each and every day, that were resilient, that wanted to, be part of something dynamic and building something that was, bigger than all of us. And I think that, was something that has really stayed with the company, even though it has grown, into this, multi-billion-dollar company. That genesis of those values are not just written on a piece of paper. They really are truly lived by everyone, and that's what makes VMware a very special place.
Let's see. Just want to look at my little list of questions here.
And I think maybe just to add a little bit to that too, is I think the approachability of everybody, the fact that there was mutual respect and trust, that sort of has been a foundational piece of, a lot of companies have lots of layers and lots of, politics. That wasn't the case, in my experience at VMware. I think, from the early of what I described earlier, from my interviews, it was a genuine, very authentic organization that was people doing great work, dynamic and approachable. And I think that sort of helped people feel connected, across the organization as well.
I've heard this from so many people that I've talked to across all areas of the company, right?
Yes.
The engineers all say it, the marketing people say it, the human resources, folks, everybody says you can pick up the phone and call anybody.
That's right.
And that was when you have a question.
Yeah, and that was sort of from Paul. And I didn't have the privilege of working with Diane Green, but certainly from when Paul Ritz came in, and then obviously I had a lot to do with Pat, Gelsinger, and working with him in the region, and it was the same. And I think he really then did take it and refine it. As we know it at today, really. Big legacy there.
Speaking of people, who are some of the folks that you would point to as having a particularly large impact on your career at VMware?
Yes. So I was thinking about this the other day, and I think, a couple of key people, but I think the one standout for me was Carl Eschenbach. And that's, I think for, a couple of reasons. I think as a sales leader, his dynamic style, his humility, were things that his approachability, his care, I think were all things that really made you feel special. And that extended beyond, just yourself as an employee. He also would always, ask about your family. He had a phenomenal memory in terms of, knowing people and making people feel genuinely connected and supported to the business. So he's probably the standout. Obviously, Pat Gelsinger. I've had a lot to do with Pat over the years as I supported him through the region, and again, his drive and to be with him on tour when he's going across the region, the energy and the focus, and just the, again, care for his people was phenomenal. And I think that we were very lucky to have, certainly, Carl, Paul, and Pat as leaders, certainly from an executive perspective. And then on the marketing side, probably Robin Matlock as CMO was probably the person who I had the most to do with in the business, and she was a great supporter of the region, the people, and really empowering the team to do their jobs and know what was right in their respective markets.
I'd like to talk about your role as DEI lead.
Yes.
And how that came about.
Yeah, so that was sort of a dual role I took on. I was running the marketing for the region, and then we had a new leader for Asia Pacific come in called Duncan Hewitt. And Duncan came on board and had come from IBM. That was his background. And when he came on board, he noticed that our diversity across the leadership team maybe wasn't as balanced as he would like. And one of the first discussions I had, with him was, we really need to, start to get a bit more rebalancing on what we're doing in the region, in all aspects, not just female representation, but across all elements of the diversity mix. And so, often DI is the domain of the HR organization, but not at VMware. While Betsy as the CPO is a great supporter, it really needs to be a business-led initiative. And so Duncan approached me to ask me whether I would help, support from a business leader perspective, the furthering of our DEI efforts in Asia Pacific. And I have twin girls, and they're now 15. But back then, they were about 8, I think. And I said to him, I also want to set an example for my daughters, because females in tech, in leadership, there's not that many of us. Our representation numbers are still not where they need to be, and so we need to help accelerate this journey. And so I worked again in partnership with the business, taking the framework from a global perspective to build out, a DI council here in Asia Pacific that had representation across the region, and also to really, if you can't measure, your impact, then you can do lots of stuff, but you really need to put some metrics and hold the business accountable. And so we set about really putting a framework, some key measures in place around how we were going to move the needle and hold the business accountable. So I helped Duncan, as his right-hand person, set that up and support that to accelerate that journey here in Asia Pacific. And I think one of the things that I'm most proud of was a project that we did in India, which was a project called Project Tara, which was all about bringing women that had been, not in the workforce, reskilling them and helping them re-enter the workforce. And so, with my marketing background, with our DI council on the ground in India, we helped set about designing a program that would help us to, get more women back into the workforce across the industry. And that program today, continues to go from strength to strength. We're now, I think, close to nearly 23,000 people that have actually signed up for the program. And I think nearly 4,000 or 5,000 people that have actually gone through it. So those sorts of things make you feel like you really are helping to move the needle and to change the game on the agenda. And so that's just one example of some of the work that we did, and things that we tried to do to really help move the needle and make it very much around the power of human difference. That's really what VMware was looking to do, is to ensure that we across the board, had an organization that was really representative of, society, and all aspects of that, across the organization.
Mm-hmm. I presume, or I understand from some of the things that I've read about your work in that area, that you did, in fact, sort of rebalance your team.
Yes, we did. And
it
I
was,
think,
it wasn't just an external facing kind of thing, but you did look.
We did. And a lot of
very
what
deeply,
we were
yeah.
very deeply. And I think that was part of, again, looking at across the board, on a regular basis, what was our attrition rates? What was our hiring rates? What were the people that we were, bringing on board? What was the cultural mix? All the different aspects of it. And, as a marketeer, obviously, always, marketing tends to probably have more, female diversity, but doesn't always necessarily have a great, mix of all aspects of the gender equation. And so we did that, and I think it was a journey over a couple of years. It didn't happen overnight, but I think diverse teams obviously, I think, drive, the stats show you this, but they drive higher impact, and you've got all the different brain powers. And we needed all of that, as we started to continue to evolve from single product to multi-product, from private to public cloud. You needed, diversity of skills and cognitive thought. And that's really was the basis of what we did.
Mm-hmm. Did you find yourself looking at different skill sets, backgrounds,
Very much so.
than maybe you had in the previous
very much
10
so.
years
And
of hiring?
Very much so. And I think as as the company was continuing to evolve as well, you were looking for, I was looking for, different balance and mix of, skills in terms of digital skills. I was looking for, people that had a lot of experience in the industry that could, help, because they needed and had the war stories, if you like, to be able to help manage through the complexity of some of the environments that we were dealing with. So yes, very much so. We were trying to get a balance of all aspects of skills that we needed, and also age and different injections for the different stages we were at.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the questions on my list is just asking you about how the culture at VMware has changed over time.
Yeah, so I think one of the, and I was also thinking a little bit more about this the other day, is I think the culture of the company um, has continued. I think what makes it special is what I told you before, which is very much, um, even though it's a multi-billion-dollar company, it's still very much has operated as a startup scale up in terms of the way it deals with its people and its employee, its approachability, its openness, the ability to get things done, the lack of bureaucracy, if you like. I think has been one of the things that has always served, the company well, and has been something that's really stayed with it, through the the years, as it's continued to evolve. So I think that's sort of a big part of it. And the culture of the values, as I said, people live them. People. It's not just written on a website. It is very much ingrained in the people that are hired, and the fact that people not only want to do their best work, but they have a higher purpose. They want to give back. They want to create something that is, a great company that's going to be part of changing the world and the greater good. And sometimes that can sound a little, um, you know, trite, but the reality is, um, people are on a mission. They're very driven, and that's what makes people stay with the company,
Mm-hmm.
and feel very much connected to the people and the culture that has been built of that approachability from management all the way down the organisation.
Mm-hmm. Um,
I'm sure you've heard that before.
I have, eh, but I think that's what impresses me about it is that I think in a large company like VMware, you could say, oh, well, any individual's experience, if you're on a good team and you have a good manager and, the vibe, that sort of culture within the part of the business where you work could be
Yes.
very positive,
Yeah.
right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that every group is like that or whatever.
No,
But I hear it from everybody. So it seems to me that it is definitely part of the DNA of the company
it
in
is.
every region, every area of business endeavor, you know, um, almost without exception. As far as the now, maybe we have an unusual sample for for our project. We're talking to people who really value, just what they've done at VMware and the experience that they've had there. But I do think it's not an accident at
No, I
all.
think it's,
And
and I think it's a rare commodity in this day and age. And I think
mhm,
after more than 25 years plus of operation, it's pretty amazing that is still part of the cornerstone of the organization.
so you left VMware in last year,
Yes, that's right.
2022.
Yes,
So do you want to tell us a little bit about your
what I've been up to.
what you've been up to? Yeah.
Yeah, so when I left VMware, I took a little bit of time out, and I've been pursuing a board career. So I've actually been independent board director, and been continuing to work with companies in this part of the world that are looking to grow and to build their businesses largely in the tech space. So a few startups, a few scale ups, and also just advising on go-to-market strategies. And so it's been a step change from what
Mhm.
I was doing at VMware from an operational role perspective. But I think it was also the right time for me to also do something different with my career. And, how do you top, a VMware and all the experiences that I had the good fortune to have had the opportunity for growth to be part of. And I think that is probably one of the other great things about the company was, in the 12 or so years I was there, you were always given the opportunity, to, if you've got something you'd like to fix or something you're interested in, it was always encouraged that you could take that on. And I think the diversity and inclusion work that we did, was a good example. I was pretty passionate about it. And I felt that was an area where, again, we could move the ball forward and help make a difference. And so I think that's, the great thing about the company. There was always opportunities for growth and expansion.
I think Joe Bagley was saying how even after being at VMware for 12 or 13 years, he still felt like things were new, and he didn't have the same job for 12 years. He wasn't
No,
stuck
that's
in a
right.
rut.
No, exactly. And I think, there was two elements, and I know Joe well, is, the company continued to evolve. It's gone from, x86 virtualization pioneer, to today, multi-cloud leader. And, that journey of going from single product to multiple product to from private cloud to public cloud to, all of that felt, and I'm sure he said this to you as well, every phase felt like a new job and a new, aspect that you were, having to get your head around and get around fast, and then drive the next phase to support the business. And I think that's an impressive story and record, and something I think that makes VMware special, and a pretty rare company that it is.
Mm-hmm. I feel I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about the global role that you had for your last couple of years there, and
Yes.
how that
Yeah, so that was
global position from your seat there in
yeah.
Australia.
Yeah, so that was an interesting um, uh, opportunity, I think, that I took advantage of. So um, how things came about, I guess, was that uh, I'd always been probably one of the strongest, I guess, of the field leaders in terms of marketing in this part of the world. We'd always been very strong on building the revenue machine, if you like, the demand engine, and that alignment with the sales organization. And so, I was looking for next opportunity to grow as well. And so we'd had some conversations with Robin Matlock at the time, and with Sanjay Poonen, actually, who was the COO, around the need to get a more consistent global engine going in terms of driving our demand, given where we were moving with the SaaS business, and very much needing to accelerate that mid tier. And so I had been talking about potentially coming to the US and spending some time there, and taking on the role. And then a little thing called COVID happened. and and at the time, Sanjay had said, well, we still would really like you to help us and do this role of setting up a demand center, bringing the field teams together to get a more consistent global footprint. And so would you be willing to do it from Sydney? And so I said yes, and despite the very early morning starts and late night finishes to cover the global time zones out of Australia. But it was, I think, one of the most, it was hard, it wasn't easy, because I was needing to establish a global demand team, bring the field teams together, and, get an engine going. And so, doing that remotely, and doing that, largely over Zoom, was a not for the faint-hearted, let's say. But it was, I think, a really rewarding. I'm very proud of that time. It set the foundations, I think, in place, for really the digital demand engine, that we now have, in the organisation, and being capably driven through by Kevin Strohmeyer and the team. So it's it was a pretty cool. Not too many people out of Australia get the opportunity to do global roles, and I think that sort of has stood me in good stead, for this next phase in my career as well.
um, the last question I have on my list, which we ask everyone at the conclusion of their interview, what do you think is the lasting impact of VMware's technology?
Yeah, so I think it is very much, as I said, a very rare company. I think the continued innovation of the company, the quality of the engineering of the product, and the influence I think it has been on the countless changes that has happened, throughout the industry, and continues to shape that. And I think that's pretty rare, for a company to have gone from a single product virtualization pioneer to now being at the epicenter of helping customers with their digital transformation, and the multi-cloud journeys, and really being critical to customers, as part of navigating this whole distributed heterogeneous world of applications, that are now dealing with, and all across the public and private cloud space, and sort of being seen very much at the center of that. I think that probably is the primary thing from a technology perspective, but I think it's also bigger than that. It's bigger than the company. It's the commitment that VMware is also had to really building business resilience, and maximizing that impact for the customers, and engineering these sustainable solutions, and really supporting the customers on their environmental goals, and their distributed workforce, and making sure they're secure, and building the best digital infrastructure today. So that higher purpose, from a ESG perspective, I think again, VMware really does live and breathe, as part of its broader agenda. And I think that is what makes the company such an amazing company, and strong culture, as well, that people get behind.
That's all I have. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Yeah, no, I think we've covered a fair bit of territory, and
Mm-hmm.
I've thoroughly enjoyed having the opportunity to talk to you.